Hey indie filmmakers, Griffin here in Tampa, Florida for the opening night of the Gasparilla International Film Festival, where my film Sriracha will get its festival debut this Friday. But before we dive into this film festival, I'd like to take you back to South by Southwest and show you what I saw at that film festival. Lots of movies. I saw 11 features and 23 short films. And my favorite film was a documentary called Harmontown about writer Dan Harmon, who created the show Community. And then he was fired from that show. It was a really hilarious film and very emotional too. A great documentary. Here is a blurry photo of Dan Harmon at the premiere. And that's me. I also went to a taping of Jimmy Kimmel, saw some live comedy, went to a Vimeo party, and met lots of cool people. But the main reason I go to film festivals is to be inspired, and I sat in on some great sessions with Seth Meyers, Lena Dunham, Casey Neistat, and each of them had some great lessons to share for young filmmakers. Which I didn't film, because can't I just sit back and enjoy a film festival for once? Just immerse myself in it? I'll tell you about one of the questions Seth Meyers received while talking about his new late night show. The question was, what advice would you give your younger self? And he said, when you're young, you try too hard to achieve perfection because you will fail. You'll make crappy art. And that's okay because you learn a lot from your failures. And Seth told the story of his last sketch at Saturday Night Live. He'd been there for 12 years, written thousands of sketches, and the final sketch that he wrote while he was still there, it just crashed and burned. No one laughed at it at the dress rehearsal, and so it didn't make it onto the show. And it was a great reminder that whatever point you are in your career, you're always failing. And it's not about achieving perfection, it's more about how do you improve? How do you learn from your failures and improve? And that makes me think about a lot of the kinds of questions I get from some of you. A lot of things like, what's the perfect camera that I need or the perfect editing gear? And I hope that you're not waiting for perfection or letting that hold you back from telling your story. Lena Dunham, the actor/writer behind the show Girls, gives this advice. Don't wait around for someone to tell your story. Tell your story by any means necessary. Lena said herself that she failed early on. She made lots of bad films, but eventually she made Tiny Furniture, which won the Best Narrative at South by Southwest 4 years ago. But that film was made in her parents' house with some of her family acting in the film on a very low budget. So she really did tell her story, the story that only she knew, only that she could tell, by any means necessary. And Casey Neistat, one of my favorite YouTube filmmakers, he comes from a poor background, which I didn't know. He used to live in a trailer and worked as a dishwasher, but he wanted to be a storyteller. So he had a camera, his friend had a computer, they started making videos together. And eventually he made some money and he bought an early iMac. And I guess the hard drive on this computer was so small that for some of the longer videos he was making, he could only edit about half of it before he filled up the hard drive. So he would render that out, print it to tape, which he did back in those days, and then he would delete the entire project and start on the second half, and then export the second half onto the tape and hope they lined up. And he never went to film school. He just made it up as he went. He points out that there's really no right way to make a film, there's just your way. Casey reminds us that luck is where preparation meets opportunity. So you have to prepare, just keep telling your stories and sometimes failing. And then opportunity, well, nowadays, he says, that's the internet. Everyone has the opportunity to have their work seen. But even just a few years ago, Casey wasn't really getting very many views on his videos.
I'm just trying to do this thing on the internet, and no one gives a shit. My kid, who was 12 at the time, has friends in 7th grade that have more popular YouTube channels than I did. And it was it was an ego hit, but it was also just like forcing myself to appreciate why I was doing it, which is just like, this is to satiate my love of making movies. That's it. Like, ignore the audience, ignore the numbers, ignore everything else.
So my big takeaway this year from South by Southwest, from all these speakers, is don't worry about making the perfect film. You won't. No film is perfect. And you'll learn a lot more from failing than from thinking that your work is gold. So just keep trying stuff and see what sticks. Just keep making videos, and that's how you will develop your personal style. I think this movie's about to start, so I should get back to this festival. But if you are in Tampa, you should come join me for the film festival premiere of Sriracha this Friday, March 21st. And I'll also be, after that, in Atlanta, then San Francisco, Muskogee, Oklahoma, Eugene, Oregon. You can see all of these events at srirachamovie.com/events.